Did you know that Hagia Sophia almost never happened? That's right, one of the most important buildings in history was almost never built. And it all came down to one man, a man who would become known as the father of artificial intelligence. His name was Alan Turing, and during World War II, he worked in a secret room in Bletchley Park, England. He and his team were engaged in one of the most important battles of the war, a battle that many people forget even took place. But without it, the outcome of the war might have been very different. This is the story of how one man broke an unbreakable code and helped to build the first computers. As we know, World War II was one of the deadliest conflicts in human history, but it also spurred a lot of innovation. For example, radar, jet engines, and ballpoint pens were all invented during the war. But perhaps the most important innovations were made in the field of cryptography. You see, the Germans used a machine called Enigma to encrypt their communications, and it was really hard to break. In fact, to most people it seemed impossible. But that didn't stop one man from trying. Our story begins in 1932, 9 years before the start of World War II. At the time, Alan Turing was a young mathematician who worked at the University of Cambridge. But that soon changed when the war began. In September 1939, Germany invaded Poland and Great Britain declared war. Soon after, Turing was recruited by the British government to help break the German Enigma code. For those of you who don't know anything about codes, don't worry. We'll explain everything you need to know. Basically, Enigma was a machine that could generate billions of different combinations every second, making it extremely difficult to crack. If you wanted to send a message to someone, you would type it out on an Enigma machine and it would be encrypted. Then the message would be sent to its intended recipient, who would type it back into an Enigma machine to decrypt it. It was like a really advanced version of Caesar's cipher. Now, if you're a math whiz, you might be thinking, hey, if the machine generates billions of combinations per second, it shouldn't be too hard to just go through them all and find the right one. Well, you're not wrong, but you'd be missing the point. Let me explain. Basically, Enigma had 3 rotors and each rotor had 26 letters on it. Now, each rotor could be set to any of the other rotors, which meant that there were 26 options for the first rotor, 26 for the second, and 26 for the third. So you might think that there are 26 asterisk 26 asterisk 26 equals 17,576 different combinations. But that's not the case, because each rotor could also be flipped in any direction, which meant that there were actually 26 asterisk 26 asterisk 26 asterisk 4 equals 176 possible combinations. But that's still not the full picture, because the Germans changed the settings every day. And once the message had been sent, the recipient would destroy the settings so that they couldn't be used to decipher future messages. This meant that if you were trying to break the code, you had to do it before the Germans changed the settings. And if you were late, the message would be destroyed. It was like a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. So you might be wondering why the British wanted to break the code. Well, the answer is simple. If you can read someone else's mail, you have a big advantage over them. By breaking the code, the British were able to learn about German troop movements, their plans, and their strategies. And this gave them a huge advantage throughout the war. But let's get back to Alan Turing. How did he solve this seemingly impossible task? Well, he did it into steps. First, he built a machine that could simulate the Enigma machine. He then used this machine to try and guess the daily Enigma settings. Once he had the settings, he used another machine to decrypt the messages. This process required a lot of computing power, but Turing's machines were able to do it quickly enough to keep the British ahead of the Germans. Turing's machines were so successful that historians say they may have shortened the war by 2 years, saving millions of lives. But despite their success, Turing and his team worked in secrecy until the end of the war. They didn't want the Germans to know what they were doing, so they kept their work a secret. It wasn't until 1972 that the British government declassified documents relating to Turing's work. And it wasn't until 1990 that the full story was finally revealed. Now, you might be wondering why Turing and his team worked in such secrecy. Well, the answer is simple. If the Germans had known what they were doing, they might have changed their methods and made it harder to break their codes. But it wasn't just the Germans who tried to keep Turing's work a secret. After the war, the British government tried to cover up his contributions as well. They didn't want anyone to know that they had been helped by a computer to win the war. They were afraid that this would cause panic and people would start asking questions like, what if Germany had one? Or what if the Germans had developed better computers? The British government didn't want to deal with all of that, so they covered up Turing's work and tried to erase him from history. But thankfully, there were people who remembered Turing and his contributions. In the 1980s, a campaign was launched to clear Turing's name, and a petition was signed by over 10,000 people. Finally, in 1999, the British government apologized for what they had done to Turing and awarded him a royal pardon. But despite all of the secrecy, Turing's work had a profound impact on the world. His methods and machines planted the seeds for today's digital age. If you want to learn more about the history of computers, you have to start with Alan Turing. So let's take a look at some of the machines that Turing built. The first machine he built was called the bomb. It was an electromechanical device that was used to try and guess the daily Enigma settings. The bomb was not a computer in the modern sense of the word, but it was the first machine that could simulate the Enigma machine. Turing's second machine was called the Pilot Ace. It was the first programmable computer in the world. In fact, it was so advanced that it's considered to be the world's first general-purpose computer. So now you know why Hagia Sophia almost never happened. You know about Alan Turing and the code breakers at Bletchley Park, and you know how their work may have saved millions of lives. But what do you think? Do you think you could have broken the Enigma code? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe for more untold stories of history's hidden heroes. Thanks for watching.